everybody. This is Glenn Maurer, and welcome to the Next Step TV Santa Barbara. Again, we're going to do a program on what we started discussing and calling California water lies. Maybe Santa Barbara water lies as well, but certainly the misconceptions would be maybe a kinder way to say it, and misleading statements being made about the water situation in California. And we did this last episode. And it was so full of data and information that we had to hustle through the half an hour we had available that time, and decided to do a second program, another half hour, and to bring back Carolee Krieger, who is the Executive Director and CEO of the California Water Information Network, an activist organization trying to do something to help consumers of California water get a fair deal. I guess that's a fair way to say it.
Yep.
Anyway, Carolee, welcome back, and thank you. We're going to do a quick summary of what we did last week, and then we're going to move on, what the last program, and then we're going to move on to some new issues.
Thank you very much, Glenn, for having me back.
Okay.
Water is even more critical now that the El Nino has passed us by in Southern California, at least.
We can discuss that. Yeah.
Yes, we can.
But yeah, it is a critical issue. It's always been a critical issue, as we've mentioned. California is a state that half lives in drought at any given time. If we can get that map up of the state of California, maybe we can get that in front, would be helpful for the beginning. Anyway, this is what we call the California Waterscape. It's a California map laid on its side to dramatically sort of give people the effect of how water is found in California. Carolee?
Well, what I'd like to have your viewers look at is all the mountains that are at the top. They're the Sierra Nevada mountains, and the Cascades are all flowing to the delta. They're drained. I mean, it's like looking at gravity, and it all goes right down to the delta, that little black spot that's on that map. And that's why the delta is the key to California water, the water supply.
Yeah, and an important thing to me, and thank you, you can move that map off if you want, but the important thing to me is for the folks to understand that the Southern California and the Central Coast area, the water doesn't come inherently from local sources.
No, it doesn't.
And historically, the state of California, being a longitudinal state, has had that water shared throughout the state. And the California Water Project back, Jerry Brown's father had a water project.
Well, actually, it started in the late in the 1930s, Glenn, when California realized that it needed to do something to get where most of the rainfall fell in Northern California, and they wanted to get it down to the south. So they built the Central Valley Project, and it wasn't until the 60s that they did the State Water Project. And those two things are really important for the audience to remember. And the point being that
water is shared. It's part of the state. It's not just a local resource for whomever happens to be on top of it. To a large degree, that's so that, and the California Constitution deals with that to a degree.
It
talks
does.
About sharing.
Well, water cannot be owned. Only the use of it is owned. Otherwise, it's a public benefit.
Yeah. So let's look quickly as to what we discussed last time. If we have that pie chart up there, we can move on to this real quickly, and remember where that water gets used. Mm-hmm. It can't be owned, but it can be used. And if we can see the pie chart up there, we'll find that there it is, and there we go. Mm-hmm. A dramatic reminder. People need to see this and need to understand this. I don't think most people do.
They really do. 80 to 84% of all the consumptive water in California is used by agriculture. And it only provides 2% of the gross domestic product for California.
Important number.
Very important number. Yes.
And even and all the rest of it. Even some of them say that domestic use or urban use is maybe 10% or 12%. This one says it's 8%. Whatever it is, it's a fraction, a 12th of the 10th or 12th of the total amount of water that's used for public consumption in California.
Right.
And that's important.
One of the things I think your viewers also need to remember is that agriculture, although it uses so much water, much of the water that they get is subsidized by the taxpayers of the United States or by the taxpayers of California.
But the point I want to make about that, and I think that's critical, is that there is plenty of water to go around.
There is plenty of water to go around.
And if agriculture is 84% of the use, but it only provides 2% of the domestic product of the state of California,
Yes.
that's a bad investment.
A very bad investment,
But
and we
they've-
have to start changing that.
They've convinced people that they have some priority right to it. Again, we're not going to go into this too much. We all know all the stories about the almonds and
Right.
each almond's worth
And
a
the
gallon of
alfalfa.
water and the alfalfa. We have a chart on that actually. If we can get that up there, the one with the graph of the uses. And yeah, this is again there we go. Alfalfa is by far the biggest user of water in the state of California.
Yep.
Almonds and pistachios combined fall behind alfalfa. Rice is behind that. Orchards, general fruit trees and whatnot, corn, grapes, way down there. We all think about grapes being a huge consumer, but grapes is way down there. But that's where the water is going, alfalfa and almonds, and these are basically exported.
That's right. 80% of the almonds grown in California, and I believe almost as much alfalfa is exported primarily to China and other countries in Asia.
Yeah. So that quick summary, we've got a lot of water.
Yep.
The lion's share of it, a huge lion's share of it is going to agriculture.
Yes.
Agriculture is not the most efficient and best use of that water.
No, and it doesn't return very much for that big investment in the water.
And not only that, it doesn't employ well either. This
It
is
doesn't.
one of the
That's
things that people need to
right.
remember is they have a lot of people working in it. They're working at very poor paying jobs and being exploited and often being abused.
Well, and so much over the years, so much has been automated with agriculture, so it's
Right.
not even about people anymore.
And even where it is, it's not about well-paid people.
That's right, that's right.
So anyway, question is, how did agriculture get this upper hand in this battle? How did they convince us that, I guess we all like the idea of growing things.
Well, I think it goes back to the fights in the early days when California first became a state. And the first large users of water were the miners.
Miners, they,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
And then came agriculture, and because they were the first ones to use the water, they got the first rights. They were the first in time,
As
so
an
they got the
industry.
first. Yes. Yes.
But the current situation is the people who are claiming this monstrous increase in water and want to build the underground canals and all of the
Those are
tunnels.
junior water rights holders who
These are
have
people who
come
have
late in the
Late
game.
to the game, but they're
Yes.
trying to take the standing.
Yes.
I think your point is
They
well
are.
taken. They're trying to take the status of those ancient or 150-year-old users.
The senior water rights holders, and they are not senior water rights holders, and they're confusing the public on purpose in order to try to get more.
Okay.
And they want the public to subsidize them. They want the urban water users to subsidize their agricultural interests, which I don't think is fair for the urban users
Well,
at
it's
all.
not, and again, urban users who are bearing the brunt of these ridiculous, and like maybe we'll have time to talk about some of these ideas that people have been touting about how we're supposed to save water. All that burden is on the home consumer and the urban user, which only accounts for a small percentage. Almost nothing on the agricultural user, which
There has been nothing formally placed on the agricultural user.
some people with junior rights have lost their.
Yes, but that's not a formal
Okay.
proclamation by the governor. For example, what he did for all urban water users was made a law that said if they don't conserve by 25%, they're going to get fined heavily, but
And-
nothing for agriculture.
Point out this again, as we did in the previous show, if Big Ag was to reduce their use by 25%, there would be enough water for decades.
For decades.
Right, okay, so
Yes.
moving on. One of the things, we're going to talk about some new lies now, okay?
Okay.
The one I want people to be most aware of is coming up. The same people, these big agricultural consumers are pushing, right now, as this program is being aired, they are pushing circulating a petition, and that petition is to, and they've they've managed to put in two of their biggest enemies. One is the high-speed rail system, and the other is that they want to make sure that agriculture has a priority use on water. So what they've got is a proposal that people are being asked to sign that's going to amend the California Constitution to say that we'll get rid of the high-speed rail bond money that was voted by the voters, convert that money into use for reclaiming water and building dams.
Well, it's not reclaiming water.
I know.
It's basically to add new infrastructure. It's to pay for the tunnels, and it's
And dams.
and dams, and it's a very bad deal.
It's a bad deal on that level, but it's a terrible, terrible deal on another level, which I think is the insidious part.
Yes.
The biggest lie is They want to make agriculture an equal player in the rights to use. Right now in California, as you were mentioning,
That's right. The urban preference is still part of the law, the water code, where in droughts, people get water first over agriculture, because the theory is that agriculture can be fallowed, but people can't.
and the other thing they're trying to do is make sure that it has a higher standing than quoting what they call environmental uses.
And that is terrible. The environment actually, in the public trust doctrine, the environment by law now is first. It's not treated that way currently, but it is by law first.
Well, among the lies that are being bandied out there by these agencies and these people who are pushing this attack is this idea that somehow a few fish in the delta or a few toads in a creek somewhere are causing all of us to suffer.
And that is absolutely not true, but they need to do that in order to distract the public away from the real things that are going on, which is their grab for the water, and they want to make us pay for it.
Pay for it and do without it.
Then that's right.
They want the idea is to have urban users feel guilty.
Right.
You can't have a glass of water in a restaurant.
Which is absurd when you think that agriculture uses 80 to 84% of the water.
Well, any one of these flood agriculture, if they would just stop flood irrigation.
That's right. As
they'd
we
probably
mentioned
take it.
last time, flood irrigation is the way 40% of that 80 to 84% of the water is delivered to the fields.
Yeah.
Highly wasteful. If they just stopped that, they would free up enough water for everybody.
So anything that put them on a restriction would force them to engage in better farming practices.
It would.
Minimally.
Yes, at minimum, it would.
Yeah, and so, but this, watch out for this petition.
Yes.
On its face, it's going to sound seductive. We want to do something about the California water problem. We're going to build more infrastructure. We're going to build reservoirs and canals and dams. We're going to pump water back into the aquifer, and all these things are promising. But hidden in that language, hidden in that thing is making agriculture come in ahead of the environment. So rivers and wild lands and marshes and the delta
and fish and ecosystems and the environment
will all be subservient to those huge almond growers
and alfalfa
fields. And and again, I'll mention what I mentioned last time, because I'm always thinking this is one of the most shocking things. In the Imperial County area, people who have senior water rights are paying something like $50 an acre foot for water. Or less, but $50 an acre, where the rest of us are paying $1,000 maybe. And they're growing alfalfa and shipping that across the ocean to China and Japan and other places, while we do without water in our showers.
That's right.
So that's a lie that I want people to remember about California water law.
So that initiative, just one more thing about that initiative. The really terrible thing about that initiative too for ratepayers in Southern California is, if that initiative passes, part of the money from it would go to pay for the two Delta twin tunnels. These are two tunnels that are 40 feet wide, big enough to fly a Piper Cub through. They're buried 150 feet down underground, and they run for 35 miles. They start in Sacramento, they go under the Delta to the pumps south of the Delta itself. It goes through very highly earthquake-prone land, and this project is currently, the governor is telling us it's going to cost $17 billion, but it's only 10% engineered, and the landowners in the Delta have kept the state off their land for 5 years. The state has no idea. They've done no core drilling. They have no idea what they're getting into in terms of what's down there under the ground. They can have no idea how much this is really going to cost. And they want us to pay for it.
And they want, and another part of, keep hitting on this, but the reason they're pushing this initiative is to create a priority for agricultural use above environmental use. And the biggest challenge to their greed and their system up to this point has been courts that have been invoking some environmental protections to stop
the Endangered Species Act has been a big one.
And if they get this thing passed, at least in California, outside the federal courts, at least the California laws will become subservient to the water that they want to use for alfalfa or pecans or whatever it might be.
The Endangered Species Act and the Clean Water Act are two very key things. I don't think any of us want poisoned water, and that's what we're going to get if
Well, again, okay, let's do it again. The San Francisco Delta that we showed you on that map,
Yep.
and if you imagine all this water collectively flowing into this, and it's been doing that, it's been going that way for tens of thousands of years.
That's
That
right.
water there's an ecosystem that was built up over eons that relies upon that water flow.
flows off the mountains right into the delta.
Out of the snow, off the mountains,
right.
into the creeks and rivers, and into the delta, and out the bay and into the ocean.
Right.
And that has created a wonderful, part of the, maybe, certainly some of the most important parts of what makes California a wonderful place.
Absolutely, and one of the species in the ocean that actually depends on
Right.
the flow of the rivers are the orca whales. They're either very close to being endangered or they are endangered because of the lack of water.
So the next thing I want to talk about, because we're in another lie that I think that you and I might have some tension about this, but I want to express this thought. There is this idea that Southern California and Santa Barbara in particular, our own backyard, is that we didn't, in fact, I think you mentioned in the beginning, that the El Nino didn't come and it didn't
That's
save
right.
us and all that. Well, some of this is true. We didn't get a lot of water to this point in Santa Barbara. But Santa Barbara historically has not provided, we're part of the California Water Project.
Well, we've only been part of the State Water Project, Glenn, since 1998.
I know that, but let me mention this number to you.
Okay.
In the State Water Project, there's 154 reservoirs
Yep.
that were tracked, and at the present moment, as the last data I had, they're 81% of their March average. So that's a pretty high number.
Well, and the state has now upped the commitment of water they're going to deliver to 45%.
I was going to mention that.
Which is a really helpful thing for
Right.
us here in
Sierra
Santa Barbara.
snowpack is at 92% of normal, and they expect it to get higher. So what I'm saying is we don't want to just look at the rain gauge in our backyard when we understand this interrelated event, and we don't want to make policy based on fear that, oh my goodness, Santa Barbara got no rain, so therefore Santa Barbara has to spend money on something that is grossly excessive or grossly destructive of something else.
Well, the problem with the State Water Project debt that we have now is that it's so gargantuan, Glenn, that if we stay, I think the pipes are there, they're not going to go away. They're not going to go away. But the problem with the State Water Project is that the debt that the state can add on to it from the tunnels or any other project they decide to do, and then we will have to pay. We have no choice.
That doesn't mean that I'm going to stop accepting state water that
Oh, no,
that has already been
and paid for. No, and I
Okay,
totally agree with
okay.
that. No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not advocating for that at all.
So I want, my opinion, that we're being made
paying
nervous.
for it.
And we're also being made nervous unreasonably. We discussed this before, I'll discuss it again. Fear is the most potent force in causing people to act.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so if we're led to be fearful by lies or misleading statements, we'll end up doing things that we're going to regret later, and we're going to spend money to our detriment and to the profit of some other group.
Well, and I
think that-
totally agree with that.
Yeah, so we need to be thinking about that.
Yes.
Among the things, again, that I think are problems in Santa Barbara, and part of the water drought situation in Santa Barbara, which bothers me a lot, and you can think about this, but Santa Barbara, the infrastructure of the water system in Santa Barbara and throughout the state. So we're moving now on a very micro level, not this macro state level.
Right.
But what can we do in Santa Barbara to save the water we have? Santa Barbara, the numbers I had, we've had 100 or more water main breaks in the last year.
And in Montecito, we've had some horrific main breaks as well, because a lot of our pipes are 100 years old.
Right, and so
We
this-
need to fix our own.
Instead of taking
System.
money, instead of a system that wants to build monstrous temples, desalinization plants or whatever they might be.
Well, I'm in favor of the
I know you
desal.
are, and I'm not, but we'll talk about that if we have time. Instead of doing that, if we had the integrity and calmness, the city administration to say the best thing to do with our money is to stop these leaks. You know, they're replacing 1% of the lines a year. It's going to take them 100 years to replace that.
And then they'll have to start all over
And
again.
they're going to start all over again. So it's a 100-year replacement cycle. That seems unreasonable. The cost of the water they would save by that process would be immense.
Yes, I agree with you. I totally agree.
Much better. So LA Department of Water Power estimates their loss at 8%. I don't know what Santa Barbara's loss is, but 8%, if we saved 8% of the water of Santa Barbara, and I think it's higher than that, just by doing infrastructure maintenance, that's the best investment we could have.
Well, I think we have lots of different options, Glenn. I'm a strong advocate of keeping our water supply as local as possible.
Right.
And the reason is that we can't count on surface water from anywhere, whether it's Lake Kachuma or Jameson in the long run, and we can't count on the State Water Project. We saw that in 2014 they could only deliver 4 or 5% of what was promised.
Right.
So,
Well, they could deliver a whole lot more if they didn't have to commit it to agricultural use.
well, the State Water Project is only a quarter agriculture. There is a lot more water out there that could be diverted through these existing tunnels. You are
Right.
correct.
Yeah, I just think it's a question of prioritizing the use of the water and accepting, the reality of where the water is, and it's always going to be moved a bit.
Right, it is.
But, so one of the things we could do locally, and I agree, if we can have local water, that's
The best.
more efficient, it's less costly than pumping water and all the other transportation issues. I mean, we've had these quacky ideas about putting a hose in the
Icebergs.
ocean, icebergs, or the mouth of the Columbia River, they're going to put a pipe down the Pacific coast.
Which is ridiculous.
It was hilarious.
Ridiculous,
It's
yeah.
pretty funny stuff. But anyway, so I'd like to see something done about that.
Yes.
Then the other thing and this is where our attention might be good. I think I don't want you to take offense personally.
No,
but I
that's
think
okay.
the desalinization idea is false, and I think it's a false lie. It's a lying kind of a thing because it promises something it can't provide, and it leads to the privatization of a natural resource as water. A better solution, in my opinion, you can respond to this if you wish, is to do much more in terms of recycling water, which is happening around the world.
It is. Both of those processes are happening around the world.
Right.
Reclaimed water is happening on a much bigger scale.
Australia has thrown out their desalination plants
Well-
and put in recycling plants.
Recycling has its own set of problems, Glenn, and one of them is the medical waste that comes through our bodies as waste into the
Well, that's
laboratories, and then it's hard to clean up to take out the hormones and the medication.
All water is recycled.
Well,
There's no
that's true.
such thing as water that's virgin water.
That's true.
And
That's true.
not even extra virgin water.
That's true.
It's all water is recycled, so the process can be done. The city of Pico Rivera, I don't know if you've paid attention to this now, they are, right this moment, they are building a facility in Pico Rivera that is going to recycle the water that they have to the point where they say they will not have to import any more water from the Colorado River or from the California Delta water, which they got in the
Wow.
past.
Well,
They'll have
potable-
100% domestic water from recycled water and well water.
Potable reuse is the state of the art that we're there now, but not legally yet. And as soon as we get there legally, and from all of the
Pico
work I've
Rivera is
done.
doing it. Irvine Ranch in Orange County is doing it. Orange County recycles more than 130 million gallons a day.
But I think it's not direct potable reuse
They
yet.
can put it back in the ground
They
and then
put
pump it out.
They put it in the ground and it gets further filtered.
Right.
Filtered.
Well,
But
but
direct
let me-
potable reuse
yeah.
would be even better,
It
Glenn,
would
because
be,
they could
but-
put it right into the pipes.
But I agree, and there's no reason it can't be done, but we aren't even being allowed to talk about that. And think about this, the cost of this program in the Pico Rivera area, they say that the treated water will cost less than $200 an acre foot.
And that's a fraction of what the desal costs.
That's right. Imported water is $1,000 an acre foot.
Oh, no, it's way more than
Well,
that.
that's
In
what they're
some
telling us.
cases, yeah.
They're saying that's what they're figuring. And desalinated water is $2,000 an acre foot
Yep.
or above.
Yep.
So a acre foot provides water for 2 households for a year. So an individual household could have a year's worth of water with $100 plus the cost of the distribution and the thing. So maybe a couple $100 of water a year instead of what we're paying. There's just thousands.
Well, the city of Santa Barbara has a very good reclamation plant that exists
That
right
doesn't
now.
work.
But it is not
It
functioning.
isn't, no, you can't tell me it's a good plant because it's a failure. It's been failing for 3 years now. They've been bragging about it, but they never get it online. It's always off. They're having to use potable water.
Why is it off?
Because they're, well, we can get into the politics of that, but I think whoever is running the city's water system is either infatuated with desal and the technology there and ignoring the other technology that's necessary to solve this problem, or they're incompetent. And I'm upset that the management of the city doesn't hold them more accountable. I'm upset that the pipelines keep breaking, 100 pipelines in a year.
100 leaks.
100 leaks, breaks a year, not just leaks. I mean, major breaks. The recycling system has been down twice now in the last couple of years. It bothers me that nobody seems to be holding them accountable. So I would like to see that done.
Well, and I'm in a total agreement with you, because reclaimed water is a local source, Glenn, and we have to keep it as local, I believe, as we can.
So we're coming, we have a couple minutes left. Let's talk any issue that you think that the public should be paying attention to besides the ones we've covered about where they're getting tricked or misled about the use of water in California.
Well, the major thing that I want all of us to be thinking about in Southern California is the debt burden that would come upon us because of those twin tunnels is so onerous that I believe it will bankrupt all of the South Coast water agencies for no more water. So that is crazy. That's really crazy.
And it's environmentally a disaster.
It's a disaster. It's a disaster because those tunnels will come after all of the wild and scenic rivers. In fact, Dianne Feinstein has already attempted to delist the Merced River to put that water into a supply for these tunnels. And
remember this, folks.
Terrible.
Seawind.org is on the screen. They can contact you at that site to find out more about what you do and the work. But remember what was said here. If this initiative gets on the ballot and prioritizes agriculture above environment, the kind of things that are being described right now will become common.
That's right.
They will be,
absolutely,
they will be standard practice. We will all be told, well, it's just for the human use is more important than the wild natural use. They've already tried to create this false idea that 40% of California water is already being used for environmental purposes.
Which is not true.
Which isn't true, because it's just the nature of the nature.
That's right.
You can't,
that's right.
You can't do that.
That's why we talk about consumptive water.
Right.
Because that's what humans use now, and that's what we have to keep focused on.
So some percentage of the water is used for clouds, some percentage of the water is used for fog, some percent of the water is used for, this is just stupidity.
It is,
anyway,
but it's a distraction away from the reality.
They want you to be panicking.
That ag uses 80 to 84 and 2% of the GDP.
Right, we back to that important number. So we're about running out of time.
Glenn, thank you very much.
Thank you. I know, again, this has there's so much material there that the public should know.
There is.
And I hope they will pay attention to this, contact your organization, and find out more about what they can do to get involved, get some of the true facts, and pay attention. This is big stuff.
It is. And remember what Glenn said about that initiative. It's bad.
Station, and you can watch this on YouTube or Ustream if you Google the Next Step TV SB.
Thank you, Glenn.